Once a patient is infected with the HIV virus, if there is a high viral load, CD4 count of less than 500, AIDS-defining illnesses, or if the patient is pregnant, or if there was a needle stick or contact of HIV fluids with the surface mucosa, then you have to start the patients on the highly active antiretroviral therapy, which is called HAART therapy. And this HAART contains 2 nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors plus one other class of the anti-HIV medications. So first, before I go over these medications, I would like to go over the cycle of HIV infection. So HIV is primarily infecting the CD4 positive helper T cells. So the GP120 surface protein recognizes the CD4 receptors, after which it makes conformational changes that will make the CCR5 and CXCR4 co-receptors available. Binding of GP120 to these co-receptors will make the GP41 protein to induce diffusion and entry of the virus. So once the virus is entered, it's an RNA virus. Via the reverse transcriptase enzyme, it makes the DNA, and then via the integrase, it will integrate the DNA into the host genome. And then from there on, the DNA will start making mRNA, makes polypeptides, and then polypeptides will be cleaved by the protease enzyme to make smaller functional proteins. So here I would like to go over the medications. So NRTI, also known as nucleotide reverse transcriptase, will competitively inhibit the nucleotide binding to the reverse transcriptase. Likewise, the non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors will inhibit the reverse transcriptase by binding to a site different than NRTIs. In any case, the NRTI medications, their main side effects is lactic acidosis. And note that these medications are inactive and they have to be phosphorylated inside the body before they become active. The only exception is the tenofovir, which is active and doesn't require phosphorylation. Now, the side effects of these medications, in addition to lactic acidosis, you should also know that didanosine is causing pancreatitis, as well as peripheral neuropathy, and then zidovudin will cause bone marrow suppression. And as a consequence of which, due to bone marrow suppression, these patients will develop anemia. And then you can prevent bone marrow suppression by giving either the granulocyte colony stimulating factors or give these patients erythropoietin to compensate for anemia. The other class of medications are non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, and their side effect is the same as the NRTIs, except that they may also cause a rash. And the way you can memorize these medications is END-VIR. So think of END-VIR. So their names start with E and D, and all of them has VIR inside the name of the medication. The next classes of medications are proteases. So if you recall, I said once the polypeptide is made from the mRNA, protease has to break them down into smaller functional proteins. And all of these protease inhibitors, their name ends with NAVIR. And their main side effect is hyperglycemia and hyperlipidemia. So how I memorize that is that if you recall the thiazide diuretics, their side effects was hypergluc, which means they cause hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia, hyperuricemia, and hypercalcemia. So the way I memorize it is that protease inhibitors cause hyperGL. So it causes hyperglycemia and hyperlipidemia. So just ignore the UC in protease inhibitors. So in any case, we have here the protease inhibitors, and one other point I would like you to know is that ritonavir is a P450 enzyme inhibitor. So therefore, if there are any other medications taken with ritonavir, their breakdown by the liver will be inhibited because the P450 enzyme is inhibited by ritonavir. And then there is one other medication called indinavir, which I haven't listed here. And this medication is another protease inhibitor because its name ends with navir, and it causes kidney stones. And thus these patients will present with hematuria, which means there would be blood in the urine. The next classes of medications are integrase inhibitors. So once RNA via reverse transcriptase is converted into DNA, DNA will have to integrate into the host genome. So the integrase inhibitors like raltegravir will inhibit the integration of the viral DNA into the host genome. And then the final medication is the enfuvirtide, which inhibits the fusion of the virus with the cell. So it inhibits the GP41 protein, the surface protein that induces fusion. And then the way you can memorize it is that fusion inhibitor is caused by enfuvirtide. And that concludes our discussion.